All right. Welcome to TI-80 3, 4 plus 101. First of all, so today's goal is to get you guys to learn how to graph equations. So we're going to graph this equation right here. We're going to enter the equations, set the window, graph it, and then we're going to look at the table function. Some general things about working with the TI-84 are on button, on button. And you'll notice above all the buttons there's little blue writing all along that you can look for too. And to access those you just push this second button first. Okay, so let's turn the calculator on. Oh look, so now we're on the home screen. This is where you enter in your normal things like 5 to the second power is 25, things like that. Here's the clear button right there, clear, will clear the home screen. You can also hit second enter and it'll pull up the last few commands that you've done in the calculator. Okay, so but that's to get that you enter once again. Second is the first thing, and then whatever is on top to access the top. Once again, if you're anywhere that you don't know and you're kind of lost a little bit, don't forget to do second and then quit to take you back to that home screen, that kind of starting position. All right, but we're here to learn about graphing. So this top row is the graphing row. You'll look across, you've got y equals, you've got the window key, you've got zoom key, you've got a trace key and a graph key. In order to graph, you can't just, if you just hit the graph button, you're going to get blank nothing, or you might get some remnant of what's left over. So in order to tell the calculator what you want to graph, you start and you work your way left to right. So this is the y equals button right here, y equals. If you hit y equals, you'll come in right here. Now, in order to enter your function in there, you have to hit the x key, which this is the variable key. You'll see on it, it says x, t, theta, and n. So you're going to say x. And then you can either hit this squared button, and we're just going to enter in this equation right here. X squared plus x minus 6 plus x minus 6. And then you hit enter. Now you can hit enter up to 10 equations, right? So that's that. And you can also go over here and you can kind of have fun. You can enter some different line types. See, just by going and entering enter again and again. But we'll go with the basic one that comes up there. All right, so now work to left to right. So we did y equals is where you enter the equation. Now you're going to go to the window, okay? And we're going to set the window so that it goes from, for the values of x, it's going to go from negative 10 to 10. And from negative 10 to 10 in y. And the x scale is going to be 1, okay? And the y scale is going to be 1. So let's go into window. So window tells the calculator where to look on the graph. And if you're not sure, it's always a good place to start is what's considered zoom standard. Okay, so I'm going to set my x scale to negative 10. Now it's important whenever you're putting in negative to use this negative button. So I'm going to say negative 10, enter, 10. So don't put minus. If you get some kind of error, so if I put in minus 10, it'll say go to syntax error, right? What that means is you need to hit this negative key down here, negative key, negative key, all right? And x scale, that just tells you where to put the x marks, and y scale tells you where to put the tick marks, and the rest of that stuff, who knows what it does. Anyway, if you're ever set to anything else and you want to go to zoom standard, or you always want to go to this is the same as z standard. So you can hit zoom standard, and now we get a graph, okay? Now, some interesting things about this graph. Now, I can't quite see what's going on, so I'm going to put a grid, I'm going to turn my grid on. And you'll notice above the zoom key, it says format. So once again, to access the blue, I'm going to hit second and then format. So second, format. And I'm going to turn my grid on so I can see what's going on a little bit better. Grid on. So I just arrowed down and then I got over it and then I pushed enter. And that toggles it on and off. Okay. So grid's on. And now I'm going to go back to my graph. You can see that puts little dots in there, right? And there's my graph. Now, so that's graphing. So we've talked about the home screen. We've talked about entering equations. We've talked about setting the window. Talked about Z-standard, and we hit the graph button. Let's talk a little bit about table. So if you see table is above the graph button, so you once again hit second graph, and then you can see the table function, and you can see all these. You can kind of look through here and see what's going on. Okay. Where these are values of input for X, right? And these are outputs for Y. Okay, so in other words, the calculator put in a 0, it got out a -6. Put in a -1, got out. Now, that's kind of interesting. So as we know, parabolas are symmetrical. Okay, they're symmetrical, and as you look at the table, you can really see that. Okay, in that you can see here's the low point is somewhere in between these two. Let me zoom in a little bit. Okay, so you can see kind of the low point is between these two here where it goes 6, and all these are symmetrical and they're equidistant apart. So -4, -4, 0, 0, 6, 6. Okay, and that makes sense, right? Because when we're solving equations, when we're solving equations, you'll notice that we have two answers that are symmetrical. Okay, let's go up here. And you can see there's two places where x equals a number and y equals 0. Let's think about that for just a second and think about why that might be. And let's go back to the graph and see if we can see why that might be. So as you can see, anyway, you can see where y equals 0. If you guys remember the coordinate axis, right? Here's where y equals 0. And, well, here's where y equals 0, right across this line, right? And you can see the x-coordinate here is 1, 2, okay? And the x-coordinate in the other place is 1, 2, -3. Now, let's think about why that might be. Let's look at this equation that we're examining. Okay, so let's go back to normal, okay? And we have this equation, y equals x squared plus x minus 6. Well, let's factor that real quick and see what we get. Well, let's see, factors of -6 that add to +1. Well, that would be 3 and -2. So we'll factor this side, x plus 3, x minus 2. Now, if we are finding solutions of this, so in other words, where we had 0 equals x plus 3 and x minus 2, then you would notice that the solution for this one would be x equals -3, and this one would be x equals +2. So, when we look at our graph, there is x equals +2 and there's x equals -3, and you can see what that tells us about the graph, which is where it crosses the x-axis, where y equals 0. So you can start to see some of the algebraic manipulation that we're seeing, that we've been doing to helps us understand part of the graph. All right. So what I want you to do for homework for the rest of the night here is I want you to graph this equation, y equals x squared plus 7x plus 12. And find the factors of this and see if you can see where it crosses the x-axis. Anyway, so that was an introduction to graphing with the TI-80 3, 4 plus calculator.